So friends, the title of this lecture is Fascism, the Fundamentals. Fascism, the Fundamentals. And fascism, intellectually or theoretically speaking, is basically an ideology that believes in anti-intellectualism. So what is anti-intellectualism? The term anti-intellectualism emerged in the United States. The word or the term, not word, the term was in currency in the early decades of the 20th century. And it got a intellectual background too. The popular use of the term anti-intellectualism got an intellectual background, which was later adopted by fascists. We know that 18th and 19th centuries were commonly perceived as the age of rationalist modernity. We believe that, or the historians label that 18th and 19th centuries were the era of rationalist modernity. During the 18th and 19th centuries, we know people began to find logic to events and things. They applied intelligence over emotion and faith. So we have to ask then, what was unique about the 20th century? We believe that 18th and 19th centuries were a time of rationalist modernity, or otherwise called Enlightenment modernity. Why? Because people used intelligence over things like emotion, faith, or irrationality. If so, the 20th century, what is unique about 20th century? And friends, in a sense, we can say that 20th century was a century of anti-intellectualism. Why was it? Because it was in the 20th century, two dominant ideologies gained currency, particularly in the interwar period, in two specific national societies, Italy and Germany. Simply, anti-intellectualism of the 20th century is said to be an attitude or a hostile attitude towards everything that is intellectual. So any theory associated with the academic way of writing or artistic expressions or social institutions or religious institutions or any other theories which raises some kinds of questions are considered to be intellectual, and these kinds of things are refuted by anti-intellectuals. That is, if you pursue some academic interest or artistic expressions, or you have some liberal progressive social institutions, you have certain religious attitudes. So friends, then anti-intellectuals are opposed to you. Anti-intellectuals believe simply that intellect and reason are less important in human life. Intellect and reason are less important in human life. Rather, your actions, your behavior, or your emotions are very important, and your emotions are able to solve practical problems. Look, their arguments. It's not intelligence, it's not your reason that is important in building society. What is important in building society is your emotional attachment and your action. That is very important. And the anti-intellectuals of the 20th century believed that reality can be understood by action and emotion. But friends, this attitude, that is, emotion and action are important rather than intelligence or reason, was in fact not a movement in the 20th century. Really speaking, it is not an attitude or it is not an intellectual position in the 20th century. This happened along with enlightenment. This aversion towards everything intellectual, this aversion towards everything intellectual, I mean everything related to intellect or reason, originated along with enlightenment movement of the 17th century. That we know that 17th century was a century of enlightenment. In history textbook, you might have come across. Am I correct, friends? So, rationalist thought, that is, people using logic and intellect to understand human world. People using intellect and reason to understand the complexities of human world are said to be rationalist. And rationalist thought reached its peak in the 17th century. And it was in the 17th century, we know that enlightenment became fully grown up. Enlightenment became fully grown up. And we know Thomas Hobbes, John Locke, David Hume, Montesquieu, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, Mary Wollstonecraft, Alexis de Tocqueville, Jeremy Bentham, John Stuart Mill. These people spearheaded the rationalist movement of the 17th century. And their writings and their philosophy placed man at the center of society. Their writings liberated man from superstition and irrational thought. They liberated man from religion. They liberated man from a God-centered world. These writings. But friends, quite interestingly, you can see that when there was an attempt in the 17th century to liberate man from irrational thought system, there was a second modernity, and we call this movement as modernity. Which movement? The attempt to liberate man from irrational thought is said to be modernity. That man needs to be liberated from irrational thoughts. But friends, there was a second modernity that was called counter-enlightenment. That also happened along with the enlightenment movement of the 17th century. What is it? It was a revolt against the enlightenment, and it was a revolt against the fundamental assumptions of the enlightenment. And this happened in the Europe. Which one? The counter enlightenment movement, or otherwise called second modernity. Counter enlightenment movement or the second modernity erupted in Europe that by the time enlightenment erupted. And friends, this counter enlightenment movement or second modernity challenged the principles of enlightenment. It questioned the virtues of man upheld by the enlightenment. And let us see what are the virtues endorsed by enlightenment. Can you tell me? Can you share your thoughts with me? What were the virtues endorsed by enlightenment? Some principles. Anybody? Some great principles of enlightenment. You all know it.
Rationalism.
Yes, Nandana?
Rationalism.
Yeah, okay. National. Then, any other views? Right. Liberty. You remember all these things? We have been talking all these things for the last couple of weeks. We have discussed so many theories: liberty, rights, freedom, tolerance, duty, equality, justice. Isn't it? These were all upheld by enlightenment, and we were all able to talk these ideas. We have discussed these ideas, and we had these ideas. Why? Because there were enlightenment movement in the Europe, and the basic foundation of all these theories were laid down by enlightenment. That we are saying that we have a right, and do you need any proof for the claim that you have a right? Do you need any proof for liberty, freedom, tolerance, equality, justice? No. Enlightenment will tell you that these are all priori, that man by nature enjoy these kinds of virtues. And friends, there were some, but at the same time, there were people who were intellectually opposed to these kinds of principles. By the 18th century, they rejected these kinds of notions: rights, liberty, freedom, tolerance, justice. Who are them? Of course, we have already come across these writers too. By the 18th century, you can see Edmund Burke, who criticized the French Revolution. 1789 is dead. His famous maxim that French Revolution was a revolution based on abstract notions of right, liberty, and justice. He rejected that revolution itself. Then Hegel. Then Karl Marx. Karl Marx was basically a counter-revolutionary, counter-enlightenment intellectual. Then Engels, Friedrich Nietzsche. Friends, these second modernity argument or the counter-enlightenment argument had different takes on man and his world. Not all these people agreed on same principles, but they had a different understanding about man. For example, Burke rejected all the enlightenment principles, and Hegel glorified the idea of state, whereas Marx had a different take on the very idea of enlightenment, because he believed the enlightenment itself was a bourgeois idea. And Nietzsche believed that man is not evolved fully. Man's nature is not evolved fully. Man is yet to evolve. That we cannot say whether he is good or bad. He is yet to grow. So we have to wait which direction man is moving on. So that is what Nietzsche said. Burke, on the other hand, upheld tradition, community, history, virtues of the elites, the virtues of the leadership. And he preferred these things over man and rationalist values. So friends, from the second of the 18th century to the Cold War period, this conflict between enlightenment on the one side and counter enlightenment on the other side, this debate continued. And there were writers who upheld the values of enlightenment, and there were also writers who opposed to the values of enlightenment. And even today, friends, there is this conflict. If you read the Sangh ideas or the RSS ideas, you will see that they never endorse the kind of modernity or never endorse the kind of enlightenment being seen in the European world. Their approach to society and man is very different. They never believe in these kinds of abstract notions being upheld by Enlightenment philosophers. So from the 18th century to the 1945, by that time Cold War started to come into the world scene. Between 1945, the time Cold War was born, and 18th century, friends, you can see that the conflict between, on the one side, modernity, and on the other side, a reverse modernity. On the one side, enlightenment. On the other side, a counter enlightenment. On the one side, an intellectual movement, and on the other side, an anti-intellectual movement. This a conflict started. And enlightenment visualized liberation of man from the constraints of history, liberation of man from irrational institutions, irrational social norms. Enlightenment thought to liberate man from the yoke of tradition and unproven belief. That was the idea of enlightenment. And the motivation of Locke's second treatise of government, or Immanuel Kant's reply to the question, what is enlightenment? Or Rousseau's book on Discourse on the Origin of Inequality. These three extraordinary books proclaimed the liberation of man. Second treatise of government by John Locke, or Immanuel Kant's book, What is Enlightenment? Or Rousseau's book, Discourse on the Origin of Inequality. These three books, founded the very idea of liberation of man during the Enlightenment era. But the second modernity that we are talking with the title anti-intellectualism basically started as second modernity, or a counter-enlightenment movement, which was based on all that differentiates and divide people. That is, second modernity upheld and endorsed everything that divided people, everything that differentiated man from man. For example, caste, race, gender differences, or ethnic divisions in society. Friends, counter modernity or counter enlightenment upheld these ideas that caste, race, gender divisions, these things are not a flash flood development in human society. That is age-old practice. Caste, race, etc. are age-old practices. Man evolved these kinds of differences in human society by experiences through history. One day, you cannot reject all these things based on abstract notions of man, liberty, justice, equality. These people argue. Differences between people are historical, and it is nature-made. You have to accept the differences. Reason has no capacity to shape your life. Religion is an essential foundation of human society. And even you should call back state to intervene to regulate your social relationship. State should regulate your social relationship. State should even intervene in the economy. These people argue. I mean, second modernity or counter enlightenment. And friends, they were against the atomistic conception of society and atomistic conception of individuals. And their worldview rejected society of individuals. Rather, they upheld community. And your skills, you have so many skills. You have writing skills, you have oratory skills, you have running skills, or you have so many skills. Where did you get it from? These people argue that you got it from the community. Or all your skills are skills given by your community. And your character, your nature, your skills are defined by your ethnic origin, your history, your language, your culture, so on and so forth. But friends, there is a problem. What is it? You see, questioning is an old tradition in human society. Questioning is an old tradition in human society. And we know when we evaluate history, we can see that the history of the world is a history of questioning in a sense. And this human habit of questioning order, established system was rejected by anti-intellectuals and later fascists. You see in India, for example, Sri Buddha questioned Hindu orthodoxy of his time. Siddhartha Gautama was a prince of Kabilavastu in Nepal. And we know that when Siddhartha Gautama attained prominence in Indian society of his time, he questioned irrational systems in Hindu beliefs. He questioned irrationality in Hindu social structure. And friends, it is historically true that in all society, prophets appear on the scene. They question the degenerated part of the old world, or a degenerated part of the old religion, or a degenerated part of the old social systems. When by the time, Gautama Buddha was a prophet, he questioned irrationality in the Hindu religion, Brahminic supremacy. And the prophets like Buddha implemented corrections and tried to improve the old religion or the old social system. They questioned the existing social system. And in a sense, you see, Gautama Buddha was in fact influenced by atheistic philosophy of the Kapila. In a sense, he was against the very idea of God, idol worship. He never said he was a god. And he never believed that the idea of God like Rama or Krishna or incarnation. Buddha never believed. It's a wonder. Those days, whether it was possible to pronounce such ideas, because it was an era of Hindu kingdoms, Hindu dynasties, the Mauryas, the Guptas, so many kingdoms and dynasties. During this time, it was very difficult to practice Buddhism. And what Buddha experienced in Nirvana, in a sense, was an infinite formless Brahman, which was upheld by Hindu religion. But because of his aesthetic outlook, Buddha declared that the experience of Nirvana was nothingness, not Brahman. Buddha announced, and he was against the very fundamental assumptions of Hinduism. But Hindus never accept the idea of nothingness. And you see, friends, in the same way, you see Charvaka, who proposed a kind of materialism in India. It was unbelievable to historians or readers of Indian history that, a society which in its nature and conduct are more spiritual also gave birth to materialist and atheist. It's unbelievable that India produced materialists like Charvaga. So materialism is a view that, experience by sense is real. There is no God. There is no sense of evil and no reality beyond human experience. This was what Charvaga said. In a sense, friends, it was a revolt against Brahminic orthodoxy in India. You see, questioning is part of human society. Or Ajivigas, Nastigas are atheists in Indian history. Or if you come back to South India, E.V. Ramaswamy Naikar, for example, otherwise called Periyar. You may call EVR or Periyar or Tandai Periyar or Naikar, Ramaswamy. These are, so many names. He despised even the Constitution of India. He asked his followers to burn that document. You burn the Constitution of India. It's a Brahminic document. Periyar said. He criticized Gandhi and he attributed, Gandhi as, the major culprit behind all the problems now we face. See, he criticized. E.V. Ramaswamy criticized. Ambedkar criticized Gandhi. Ambedkar criticized Gita. Not your neighbor Gita. I mean Bhagavad Gita. Friends, this sort of questioning is part of human culture. But these anti-intellectuals simply reject all these kinds of traditions. And when somebody reject everything intellectual, we call them fascist. Because they never tolerate intelligent things. Fascists never tolerate intelligent things. And friends, another idea you have to keep in mind when you study or when you read something about fascist is the fact that fascists are skeptic. First thing is that fascists are basically anti-intellectual. I am not here going to define fascism. Fascism I will define in my next lecture. This lecture is about the basic fundamental assumptions of fascist. First thing we have to understand is that fascists are basically anti-intellectual. They are against everything intellectual and intelligent. And they are against the tradition of questioning. They never tolerate questioning. They never tolerate when you question authority or power. You have to give unconditional faith, which is the motto of everybody who are said to be fascist. The second point is that fascists are basically skeptic. Friends, skepticism is basically a philosophical school of thought. It's a method that questions the possibility of certainty of knowledge. Whether knowledge is certain, whether truth is real. And we know that knowledge requires justification. That is, if you say there is gravitational pull, you have to prove it. Verification is the mark of science. How is it possible? It's possible only by a skeptical mind. Skeptics believe that it is not enough to have a true belief. It is not enough to have a true belief. One must also have a good reason for that belief. You simply believing doesn't give you any sense. You should have a reason to believe. If you are going to say that I am not going to marry, you can say that, but it is not a belief. Why? Because you should have a reason not to marry. So in that way, you should have a sound reason for your belief. Skeptics claim that it is not possible to have an adequate justification to things. It is not possible to have an adequate justification for things. Justification for belief must be founded on solid grounds. If you have a belief, you should have justification, and that justification should be founded on solid grounds. That said, it is basically an ancient philosophy and an ancient science, skepticism. It is formed out of doubts. Doubts are widely accepted as a belief about that is across the world, doubts are accepted as a standard practice. For example, in ancient times, skeptics challenged the claims of Plato, and they challenged the claims of Aristotle. They challenged the claims of Socrates. They even challenged the claims of Stoics. During Renaissance, the claims of philosophers like Rousseau or Voltaire, Montesquieu, John Locke were rejected by scholasticism and Calvinism, because scholastic and Calvinists were skeptics. In the 17th century, skeptic attacked Cartesian philosophy. Cartesianism is a school of thought founded by French philosopher René Descartes. A French philosopher and mathematician, René Descartes founded Cartesianism. I think, therefore I am. That's what René Descartes said. Or Descartes, along with other scientific revolutionaries like Copernicus, Johannes Kepler, Galileo Galilei, founded a scientific movement. And you see, Calvinist or scholastic philosophers rejected that idea of scientific outlook founded by René Descartes along the lines of Copernicus' thoughts or Kepler's thoughts or Galileo's thoughts. And later you can see that skeptics attacked the Enlightenment itself. They attacked Enlightenment philosopher Immanuel Kant. They began to question him. Even skeptics attacked Hegel, George Wilhelm Friedrich Hegel. See, each challenge led to a new attempt. So skepticism since Enlightenment is believed to mean disbelief. That is, you have to disbelieve everything. You disbelieve everything. You may have so many things to believe, but you have to disbelieve everything. Primarily religious disbelief. Skeptics are thoroughly convinced that man is inherently a fool. Friends, man is inherently a stupid. You cannot trust man. Men are, very inward looking, very, stupid creature of the nature. That is what skeptics believe. There is no point in trusting man. There is no point in loving man. Man's foolishness is why man is fool. They inquired. Man is fool because man is motivated by pleasure, his body pleasures. Man's behavior is motivated by their body pleasures, and they have nothing, inherently intrinsic to their creation. Nothing inherently intrinsic to their creation. There is nothing novel in man. There is nothing abstract in man. Man is nothing but simply a pleasure-seeking animal. So that's why they said man is a fool. Because man is always, looking down for food and wine. Man is always looking for food and wine. And friends, this is another, intellectual foundation of fascism. Fascists are also skeptical, and they are skeptical of man. And third point, fascists believe that you have to re-engineer the society. You have to re-engineer the society. How to re-engineer society? You should have an organized program to re-engineer society. For example, friends, I can give you some anecdotes which will be good for you to understand how fascists re-engineer society. For example, you see, in the 1980, Bharatiya Janata Party was founded. In 1991, India endorsed new economic policy. And we know that by opening up of the Indian economy, global capital started to flow into India. And capitalist patriarchy too came to India. And by the same time, cultural identity assertion consolidated among so many different groups. And we know in 1990, former BJP patriarch Lal Krishna Advani, LK Advani, totally called, organized 6 Radha across India, across the nook and corner of India. He organized 6 Radha to consolidate BJP's presence in different parts of India. And on 6 December 1992, Babri Masjid was demolished. And Atal Bihari Vajpayee completed 5-year tenure as the first non-Congress Prime Minister between 1998 and 2004. And in between, you see, 2002, Gujarat riots occurred following the Godhra train burning. Gulbarg Society massacre took place in 2002. In 2014, we will see that BJP came back to power and Mr. Narendra Modi became the Prime Minister of India. And you see, during this time, we can see that Ghar Wapasi, a series of religious conversion activities organized by Vishwa Hindu Parishad and Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh, started to convert non-Hindus into Hinduism. And it became a serious subject of public debate in 2014. Sometimes you may remember. You are school going then, I think. Friends, in between, you see, in between all these things, you can see that cow became a controversial thing, kiss became a controversial thing, bikini, girls wearing bikini became a controversial thing, school textbook became controversial things, literary awards, roads, rivers, just to mention a few things. All these things were, became controversial. So many names of roads, names of idols, content of school textbooks, everything, became controversial. Writers and rationalists were killed. National anthem was politicized. Painters and artists were expelled and attacked. You remember? Famous Indian painter. Who was that? Who went to London because of painting work he had done. M.F. Hussain. Movies banned. You remember? One movie by South Indian actor Kamal Hassan that generated controversy. Educational and cultural institutions were infiltrated by some people with ideological motives. Friends, this is called social engineering. You have to engineer society in a very specific way. You problematize everything based on your own worldview. Problematize. You see, right from 1980, Bharatiya Janata Party was founded in India, and this 2021. What happened over this, short period of time? Everything has been re-scripted in India. This is what happens in a society which are more fascistic. You can see that, everything is politicized. This happens in all the society. If you go to Donald Trump's USA or Benjamin Netanyahu's Israel, you will see the same thing. Fascists refute foundations of society on the basis of some notions like liberty, rights, justice, etc. They never believe in any kind of society based on these kinds of abstract notions. Society built on strong foundation. That is what fascists argue. You reorder society based on strong foundation, not based on abstract notions like right, liberty, or justice, or freedom. Abstract notions will destroy society. Fascists believe. This is third point you have to keep in mind when you read about fascism. And fourth point, friends, it is anti-foundationalism. What is anti-foundationalism? You will see, friends. First, let us talk. What is foundationalism? Foundationalism is the idea that everything should be tested. Everything should be tested, verified. Socrates was believed to be the wisest man in ancient Athens. But Socrates never believed that he was the wisest man. The oracle said he was the wisest. The oracle of Delphi. The oracle of Delphi said Socrates was the wisest man. But Socrates never believed he was the wisest man. But he believed that oracle is true. So he got a puzzle. So he wanted to resolve that. Foundationalism. What is that? He wanted to test whether oracle was right. Despite the fact that he believed oracle was truth, but he wanted to test it. That is called foundationalism. And so he started to question people with his knowledge. And in the end, we know that Socrates proved himself as the wisest among all. Descartes, French philosopher of 17th century, Descartes once famously said, I think, therefore I am. What is it? I think, therefore I am. It is the assumption that I have a mind. That mind is independent of the external thing. And I can control myself. I can control my thoughts. No external forces can shape my mind because I am myself. And my mind is independent. And my thought is independent. So I am Descartes. Nobody needs to interfere in me and declare that I am Descartes. I am Descartes because I have a mind. And my mind is shaped by myself, not external forces. That's why he famously said, I think, therefore I am. So Karl Popper, another famous philosopher, Karl Popper once famously spoke about an idea of falsification. What is falsification? He proposed that Europeans believe all swans are white. All swans are white. And Karl Popper said you have to falsify the idea that all swans are white. How? Because Europeans never went to outside world and they never went to Africa. They never went to Asia. That's why they believed that all swans are white. But it is only after geographical discoveries they found that there are swans with other colors. And so, if you wanted to prove that all swans are white, you have to disprove that there are swans with other colors. That is, if you have God, if you believe in God, you have to prove that there is no evidence to prove that there is no God. Clear? Okay? If you believe in God, you have to disprove all the arguments against God. Disprove all the evidences against God. Then only you can believe in God. If you believe in God, first you disprove all the arguments against God. Without disproving all the arguments against God, if you believe that there is God, you are a fool. This is what Karl Popper said. Friends, this is an epistemology. Foundationalism is an epistemology. But friends, anti-foundationalism is different. It's a philosophical position that rejects fundamentals. It's a philosophical position that rejects fundamentals. This is what fascism also is doing in society. They reject the fundamentals. The basic beliefs are the building blocks upon which non-basic beliefs are structured. It rejects the need to ground philosophy. It needs to ground philosophy. That is, anti-foundationalists are philosophers who are in a sense accused to be nihilist or moral relativist. It is a philosophical position which rejects the idea of a single unified whole. It is a philosophical position that reject the idea of a single unified whole. They never support these kinds of worldviews. Anti-foundationalist. The existence of what we call knowledge, for example, anti-foundationalists believe that the existence of what we call knowledge only exists because we have created it. All knowledge we have are created by ourselves. For example, you say, if a tree falls in the forest, you are saying that a tree falls in the forest. Of course, no problem, a tree is falling in the forest. Suppose a tree is falling in the forest and there were no people around and nobody has seen that a tree has fallen. Friends, how can you believe that the tree has fallen? Or, if you speak loudly in an open Maidan, but no one hears it and no people were around you, and you are speaking loudly, but friends, how can you prove that you were speaking loudly? Or you say that you love someone, but the one you love never know that you love. Then how does it mean? How does it make sense that you love someone, but that someone is not learning that you love them? That means, anti-foundationalists doubt whether the tree has ever fallen because nobody has seen it in the first place. Anti-foundationalists doubt. If you speak loudly in an open Maidan, but there were no people to hear it, whether you have spoken loudly. Anti-foundationalists doubts. If you love someone, but nobody know that you have loved someone, how can you say that you love someone? In that sense, friends, life is defined by personal experience, not abstract notions. Life is defined by personal experiences. So to the anti-foundationalist, learning is the only something which man uses to comprehend what society should look like. You should learn. You should experience society. It is only through experience we know that what society is. Abstract notions or philosophy cannot do any service to society. If you are convinced, then it is true. If not, then it is false. For example, Voltaire, the French philosopher, one of the influential French philosopher of very famous philosopher of the 18th century, he was quite religious and he did not believe that we could know definitely where we would go after death. He did not believe that we could know where we would go after our death. He believed since there was no soul and humanity itself was imperfect, that only God could determine where we could go after death. Look at the arguments he was proposing. He believed that since there was no soul and humanity itself was imperfect, that only God could determine where we would go after death. So for proposing this idea, he was sent to jail, Basel prison, for 1 year for proposing this idea. Nietzsche, another philosopher, or Derrida, these writers or philosophers were anti-foundationalist. They rejected the basics upon which non-basic things were founded. This notion, the notions of basics, they rejected this idea. This is one point you have to keep in mind when you read about fascism. They are anti-foundationalists. First point is that they are anti-intellectuals. Second point is that they are skeptic. Third point, they reorder the society. And fourth point, they are anti-foundationalist. And fifth point, they are nihilist. Fascists are nihilist. Very dangerous philosophy, nihilism. What is nihilism? Nihilism is the belief that, all values are baseless. Nothing can be known in the world. or nothing can be communicated. Nothing can be communicated. It's extreme pessimism. Nothing is working in this world. Or it is otherwise called a radical skepticism. It condemns the very basis of existence. Why do we live? Is there any purpose for our living? What is the purpose of life? Nothing at all. This is called nihilism. They reject everything. They are contemptuous of everything. This is what fascists are, friends. They are contemptuous of everything. A true nihilist would believe, a true nihilist would believe in nothing. A true nihilist would believe in nothing. They will have no loyalty. They will never love anybody. They will have no loyalty to anyone. They will have no purpose other than an impulse to destroy things. So Friedrich Nietzsche was a nihilist. You see, Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, or Renaissance, Enlightenment philosophers, ideas of the 18th century and 19th century, which created a new world order. Man was liberated. A new world order was created. No social system was created by 19th century. But nihilist, this is what artists, works of artists, poets, writers, nation states, laws. All these things created the new world by the 19th century. But you ask, the nihilists ask, did strife end it? Did poverty end it? Did human suffering end? Did strife end? Did poverty end? Did human sufferings end? You have seen the First World War. You have seen the Second World War. You have seen the nuclear holocaust. Fear everywhere. Violence everywhere. Problems with the man is that man has no any nature. We are very stupid, friends. We are very stupid. That is what nihilists tell. You see, friends, fascists are basically nihilist. Pettiness rules us. This is what fascists believe. Pettiness. We humans are petty. We are irrational. That's what fascists believe. You see, Kanhaiya Kumar has great fan following, whereas Vandana Shiva stands for great, a similar and great cause, but she has no follower. But Kanhaiya Kumar got media popularity and he has follower. But why the same thing is not happening with Vandana Shiva? She is an eco-feminist. She connect feminism with ecology, but her ideology has no followers. Why? Kumar is able to appeal to emotions, nor Shiva. You see, Sachin Tendulkar has huge fan following. He looks at the gallery when he was striking the ball, and he is looking at the gallery when he was playing, what the spectators are doing. When he hits boundaries or sixes, he was always bothered about what happens in the gallery. He loved the roaring spectators when he runs between the wickets. But friends, you see, even though he has very huge fan following, as a person like Ramayendra Guha, who is a great intellectual, he has no followers. He has very few followers. He talks very intelligent things. But why, people are not following Ramayendra Guha, but why people are following Sachin Tendulkar? Mr. Narendra Modi has huge fan following. But why a person of similar stature, once Lal Bahadur Shastri, he had that much fan following in India, but he was a great politician. He took personal responsibility of a train accident when he was a minister. See, things are changing. Look, Savi Sharma, a pulp fiction novelist, she has very huge fan following. But the Kerala-born, English novelist, Anis Salim has very few followers. But he is a great writer. Savi Sharma is a pulp fiction writer. You see, Ravinder Singh has huge followers. Amish Tripadi has huge fan following. Chetan Bhagat has fan following. They are all, what may be called this Pamman kind of writers. Once we had a writer in Kerala called Pamman. He used to write this ticklish novel. But these people have huge fan following, which Arvind Adiga hasn't, which V.S. Naipaul hasn't. V.S. Naipaul and Arvind Adiga are great writers, but they have no huge fan following. But Ravindra Singh has, Amish Tripathi has, Chetan Bhagat has. Why people read these people, but not, very serious writers like Arvind Adiga or V.S. Naipaul? Because simply, friends, fascists believe that you people are very much emotional creatures. You are very much emotional creatures. You are very petty people. Pettiness motivates your behavior. You love emotion, not facts. You love when facts are distorted. You love when lies are told. You love emotional things. Kancha Elaya, a famous Indian political science professor who wrote a famous book, Why I Am Not a Hindu. He talks about his childhood. He played with Muslim friends during his childhood, and he recalls in his book, Why I Am Not a Hindu. Why I Am Not a Hindu. That was a famous book, but nobody read it. It's a problem. Why I Am Not a Hindu. It's a very famous book, but nobody read that book. And he was saying when he was a child, he used to play with the Muslims, boys. And when he was playing with the Muslim boys, upper caste Hindu boys tell him that you should not play with the Muslim boys. And he replied to that upper caste boys of his age, look, you are Brahmins and I am a lower caste and you never respect our lower caste. But Muslim friends love me. They never judge me as a lower caste. So I love Muslims, not upper caste Hindus. I owe everything to the Muslims. I am a lower caste. I get respect from Muslim friends. No, I don't get respect from upper caste boyfriends. But friends, nobody read that book. But you on the other side, you see, Shashi Tharoor has written a book, Why I Am a Hindu, and people read it. Why I Am a Hindu. He wrote a book, Why I Am a Hindu, and people read it. It became an Amazon bestseller. Look, the reason is very simple. We humans are very, very stupid. This is what fascists believe. This is what nihilists believe. Friends, I still firmly believe that if this lecture on fascism, suppose if it is going to be delivered by a film star or a celebrity in this class, there will be so many people. Now there are 25 people. But I believe that if this lecture is going to be delivered by a film star or a sporting celebrity, you will come and sit till the last word of the speaker. I'm sure there will be a very big and huge fan following. In doing so, friends, the audience here never think about the eligibility or the ability of the person who speak on fascism. People are not thinking about whether that person is so much experienced, so much talented to speak on fascism. Rather, you simply give prominence to the privilege of that person to be a celebrity. Your speaker, your teacher who speaks on fascism is not a celebrity. He has not that privilege. But the sporting person or film actor who came here to deliver that lecture on fascism will attract people because he has got a privilege. What is his privilege? He is a celebrity. And the teacher has no such privilege. And you never judge the ability of the speaker. Rather, you just look at on the privilege of the people concerned. And you never inquire whether that star or celebrity got any credential to speak about a topic like fascism compared to your experienced teacher. See, this is what happening in your age in college days, that when there is college day celebration or a college festival day, you will see that there will be huge gathering of students if it is to be attended by a celebrity. If you have a celebrity invitee, a celebrity guest, students rush to the venue. But at the same time, if there is a person with intellect, a person with a good reason, a person with good writing ability comes to your venue and speak, there will be no audience. But you will go and listen to all the stupid things, all the foolish things the celebrities talk. And you simply clap, right? We are simply foolish creature, friends. This is fascists know better than anybody what humans are. So, no matter what, friends, You can see this happens during your college life, college days. You will see these kinds of things. That's very much human, dear friends. During those age, we are just that, and we are simply for the fascists. We are stupids, very stupid creature. So fascists try to leverage our pettiness. They try to leverage our emotional character. They try to leverage out of our irrational trait, and fascists appeal not to your brain but to your emotion. Fascists always try to appeal not to your brain but your emotion, and people can be motivated by emotion, not by brain. That's why you go to watch what celebrities are saying, not intellectuals are saying. They appeal to your pleasure aspects of life, not reason aspects of your life. They appeal to your sense, not to your intellect. Right. This is what the fundamentals of fascism, friends. I'm going to wind up this lecture, and the floor is now open for discussion, friends.
ഈ ഹിറ്റ്ലറിന്റെ ജർമ്മനിയൊക്കെ ഫാസിസ്റ്റ് സൊസൈറ്റി അല്ലേ?
അതെ അതെ.